We just got one. A new verbal commit for the defensive line and a flip from Clemson. From the 919 to the 305. Keshawn Stancil, welcome to the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Miami staff does not want to let me sleep. 2 consecutive nights, 2 verbal commits. It was Milan Paris yesterday, 4-star wide receiver. It's 4-star defensive lineman Keshawn Stancil today. And Mario got his spatula out for this one, my friends. I am Alex DONNO, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about the challenge coming up this Saturday. It's going to be homecoming for the SMU Mustangs. Miami's going to try to crash that party. Noon on Saturday. It'll be 11 a.m. there, Central Time in Dallas. We'll talk about the updated recruiting rankings after Miami has just landed another one. And yeah, it just became official. Keshawn Stancil, who stands 6'3", 280 pounds. He's actually up to 6'4" now, I'm told. 6'4", 280-pound defensive lineman out of Clayton, North Carolina. According to the 24/7 Sports Composite, this is the 23rd ranked defensive lineman in the entire class of 2026, and he's the 10th overall player out of the state of North Carolina. This is a big-time player who, folks, has been committed to the Clemson Tigers. And, you know how Dabo is very old school. He does not want his verbal commits taking visits elsewhere or talking to other programs. Like, he really basically has like a no-tolerance policy for, wanting them to shut things down. So I'm sure Miami had to work really hard behind the scenes for this one. Keshawn Stancil, we'll get to him as a defensive lineman in a second. He is a dual sport athlete in high school. No word yet on if he wants to also be part of the track team once he gets to Miami, but he's a very good shot put thrower. Maybe not quite as good as Jackson Cantwell, who's like a state champion and almost an Olympic caliber guy. But I'm told Keshawn Stancil has a 49-foot, 7-inch shot put. I know nothing about shot put, but I hear that's pretty good. He's also, since the end of his junior season, Keshawn Stancil has put on 30 pounds. So he was about 250 at the end of his junior high school season, now at about 280 as a senior in high school there in Clayton, North Carolina. I was told I really need to watch Stancil's senior film. So far, I've only been able to get my hands on the junior stuff. And I'll tell you, Keshawn Stancil, he's big enough, especially now that he's put on extra weight. He's big enough and powerful enough to play inside, but he's also got the motor where he can play on the ends as well. So he's got a lot of versatility, Stancil. So far in his senior season, which is not over yet, he's got 56 tackles, which is a lot from a defensive lineman, 15 tackles for loss, which is a lot for anybody, and he's got 4 sacks so far. So again, he was committed to Clemson. He has flipped to the University of Miami. I think the last time we really talked about Stancil, because, seems like this recruitment has continued very quietly during the time he was committed to Clemson. The last time we talked about him, I think, was in June when he made an official visit to Miami. Always wanted to be a Miami Hurricane, from my understanding. And Miami ultimately wins out. I mean, I say wins out. We're seeing it's not National Signing Day yet, but when you get a flip less than 2 months away from National Signing Day, it's usually a pretty good sign. And this is a player who wanted to be a part of Mario Cristobal's culture, and he really wants to play in Corey Heatherman's defensive scheme, and he wants to be developed by the likes of Jason Taylor, the Hall of Famer, and another NFL veteran and former Miami defensive lineman, Damione Lewis, who's now coaching the defensive line. They coach the defensive line together. Lewis, more of the interior, and Jason Taylor, more of the edge rushers. And these are players that Keshawn Stancil wants to be coached and developed by. Stancil has twitch. He's got power. He plays violently, and it fits the mold for what Mario Cristobal wants on his defensive line. So Keshawn Stancil is now a Miami Hurricane, and this is really exciting. You look at what Miami now has committed in their class of 2026. Stancil becomes the 25th verbal commit for Miami. Somebody was asking me how big I think the class is going to be. I think it's going to be a little bit bigger than 25 by the time we're all done. We'll talk about that. So Stancil is now the 5th highest rated commit that Miami has landed. I'll go in order of the stars and the grades. Jackson Cantwell, 5-star offensive tackle, leading the class. Cantwell was just back on campus visiting Miami. He lives in Missouri, so he doesn't get to town as often as some of the Southeastern guys do. But Cantwell was just here for the Stanford game. He is rock solid to Miami, by the way. Jackson Cantwell is fully locked in. Then you've got 4-star wideout Samorian Wingo, 4-star receiver Vance Spafford, 4-star tight end Israel Briggs. Stancil now ranked right behind them on the recruiting rankings. 4-star linebacker Jordan Campbell. 4-star defensive back Jalen Seatbelt Waters. 4-star edge rusher Ashari Charles, who's absolutely awesome. He's a freak. I can't wait for him to get here. 4-star quarterback Darion Coleman, who's a 4-star composite. By the way, I know 24/7 still has him on their regular grades as a 3-star, but he is a 4-star composite. Milan Paris, 4-star receiver, who just committed last night, so we go 2 for 2. 4-star offensive tackle Ben Congdon, 4-star corner Jontavius Wyman, 4-star corner Brody Jennings, 4-star corner Camden Portis, 4-star offensive tackle Joel Irvin, 4-star safety Cortez Redding, 4-star running back Javion Mallory, 3-star defensive lineman Anthony Kennedy Jr., 3-star receiver Tyron Evans. Miami's got 4 wide receivers now committed in this class after landing Paris last night. 3-star linebacker Justin J.J. Edwards, 3-star offensive lineman Cannon Pickett, 3-star offensive lineman J.J. Sparks, 3-star O-line Reese Woodrow, 3-star defensive lineman Tyson Bacon, and Freddie Saintius. Those are the 25 Miami Hurricanes verbal commits. Now, in adding Keshawn Stancil to this group, and I can't wait for him to get here. It's a really exciting player. Miami technically they move up in the composite. Miami now has a score of I think 270 and some change. They're like decimals behind LSU for the Miami has the 12th graded class in the country. I know we went over this last night. It has not changed since last night, but Miami at 12th is decimal points behind LSU at number 11, Michigan 10th, Ohio State 9, Tennessee 8, Texas Longhorns 7, Oregon Ducks at 6, Texas A&M 5, Notre Dame 4, Bama 3rd, Georgia 2nd, and USC with the top class in the country right now. So Miami, continuing to climb. Hopefully we can get back into that top 10 in the near future. But yeah, it's been a really, really big week. Adding 6'4", 280-pound, nasty defensive lineman Clayton Stancil. And again, Keshawn Stancil, Clayton, he plays in Clayton, North Carolina. Keshawn Stancil, adding him to this class. Again, watching this guy, very disruptive. He's in the backfield constantly, making tackles for loss, making sacks, and he's also got the speed to catch up with receivers who are running with the football. So Stancil's a freaky kind of athlete, big-time shot putter on the track team as well. Welcome to the U. All right, we're going to answer questions from the Locked On Canes insiders when we come back. If you want to become an insider, click the link in the show description below. Try it free for 14 days. If you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. Give you a lot of added value on there on the Locked On Canes insiders chat. We'll talk about the SMU challenges. We'll talk about running up the middle. We'll talk about everything right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. Guys, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Plus pick awards than anyone else. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Hey, we're going to tomorrow we're going to do a crossover episode with Grayson Singleton, who hosts Locked On SMU and does an awesome job. And this is going to be a big game for the Mustangs, big game for the Canes, of course. Miami's trying to keep their college football playoff hopes alive. SMU, they've lost 3 times this year, but only one of those an ACC loss. So SMU technically still alive for a conference championship game. Beating Miami would go a long way for them. Obviously, Miami wants to go in there and take care of business. So we're going to have a lot to discuss with Grayson Singleton tomorrow from Locked On SMU. By the way, former Miami offensive coordinator RHETT LASHLEE, who's the head coach of the Mustangs, said about Miami this week, I can confidently say it's the most complete team we've played since I've been here. They're national championship good on defense, he says. They're really, really good. Offensively, you've got a national championship caliber quarterback and a lot of playmakers. Now, we know coaches like to say really nice things about the opponents. Mario Cristobal had a lot of nice stuff to say about Bethune-Cookman, for example. Like, you kill the opponent with kindness. In terms of what LASHLEE said, I think I believe him. I guess the only other team you would say, 2 teams you would say that would be in the running to be like better teams that they face than Miami since he's been there. Well, since they've been in the ACC, I guess. They lost to Clemson last year in the ACC Championship game. But I would argue Miami this year probably a little bit better than Clemson was last year. They got their brakes beat off by Penn State in the college football. Like last year's Penn State, before they got James Franklin fired, last year's Penn State was pretty good. So I guess those would be the other teams you would say that maybe are better than what RHETT LASHLEE is facing. But he's not wrong about Miami's defense. Like, Miami's defense is a national championship caliber defense. I think our quest as Miami fans and, the actual team is to show a little bit more consistency on offense. Great offensive line, really good running game at times. MALACHI TONEY is one of the most explosive receivers in the country. Now, he has been consistently good all year long. Carson Beck has had his ups and downs. You saw in the Florida State game how good he can be. You saw in the Louisville game how suspect he can be. So Miami is searching for consistency on offense. Like, the defense hasn't been perfect, obviously, but the defense has been a lot closer to perfect than the offense has been. But, I think what RHETT LASHLEE said, it's not crazy to say that, Miami is the best and most complete team that he's played since he's been back at SMU as the head coach there. So I respect him for that. And, of course, Mario Cristobal, Carson Beck, and company have had nothing but nice complimentary things to say about SMU. And SMU, talented football team that got a really good defensive line. Their defense has played well. Like, I know I brought up this week, and I'm not wrong, that their passing defense, giving up over 304 yards per game, is statistically the worst in America. However, they have one of the top graded defensive lines in the country. They're very stout against the run, and they've been great at forcing turnovers. Their defense has 12 interceptions and 8 fumble recoveries on the season. Now, a big problem with that has been their offense has not taken advantage of those takeaways. An example, SMU just lost 13-12 against Wake Forest. They forced 5 turnovers in that game, and they scored 0 points off of those takeaways. Now, always that Miami thing happens where, hey, they turned 5 takeaways into 0 points last week. If they get 2 takeaways against Miami, they probably turn that into 14 points. Actually, maybe not, because Louisville didn't turn any of their takeaways into points against Miami. Those were just lost possessions for Miami, but the defense held strong. So maybe that pattern could play out, but I need to see Carson Beck, no interceptions this week, please, because SMU does a good job forcing those. Take care of the football, and SMU has a really good rushing defense. Miami's going to try to test that, but their passing defense has been suspect. Can you find C.J. Daniels down the field? Can you get the football in MALACHI TONEY's hands a lot? Because he's going to make, pedestrian plays into big plays with the way he's able to break tackles and elude tackles and make people miss. Can you keep getting the likes of Tony Johnson and Josh Moore and maybe even JoJo Trader and Elijah Lofton more involved in the passing game, because there could be vulnerabilities there from SMU. As good as their defense has been overall, they've not been good against the pass this year. And if you can get that running game going, play action, Carson Beck is really good in play action. Not nearly as good without it. So play action, I think, is going to be a key for Miami. All right, we get a couple of almost identical questions here. So I'll read them both, and then I'll answer them 2 for 1. First from a 727 area code, and one from Zach, who says, hey, I would like your opinion. The first question, I'm not buying what Dawson is selling on the running game, he says. I watch college football every weekend, all day. I see teams run outside all the time, and that was his excuse yesterday for not running the ball outside. I'm not buying what he's selling. Zach says, hey, how do you feel about Shannon Dawson's take on running inside during his press conference? I feel like he's being stubborn. So let me give you a quick, we played the full 2 minutes of Dawson's answer yesterday, so I'm not going to play the whole thing again, but let me give you a key quote here on what Dawson had to say. Dawson said, when you say running up the middle, when you're in the shotgun and handoff outside zone, it's going to be a B gap or an A gap run 90% of the time, he said, with any team in the nation. The majority of what we do is inside zone run game. We do run outside zone about half the time. It depends on the game, structure of the other team's defense. He says we are big, physical, strong people. We move people up front. All right, so my take. Dawson, he also added that it's up to the running backs to decide in the moment which gap to hit, depending on what they see from the defense and depending on the blocking. So when plays don't go to the outside, that's not necessarily the way Dawson called it, all right? I think Dawson is saying that in the base of Miami's conventional offensive sets, designing running plays, designing them to go outside the tackles doesn't fit the scheme. Now, we have seen, I'll say this in Dawson's defense, we have seen on a few occasions in the past 2 games where Miami runs jet sweeps to Malachi Toney that find success, like the touchdown he scored against Louisville. He had a 13-yard run, Toney did, against Stanford last week. So I will say this. If Shannon Dawson, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt on this, all right? If Shannon Dawson does plan to run more plays like that, the last thing he would do is to tell you about it in a press conference, because he doesn't need to put that on tape and alert RHETT LASHLEE or any of the other coaches Miami is set to face. So if he plans to run a little bit more innovative and tricky type of plays, the last thing he's going to do is tell you about it in a presser, right? I will also say, and who was it? Adam Lichtenstein from the Sun Sentinel wrote about it this week. Malachi Toney has had a ton of success catching balls in the flats, which has kind of been like the equivalent of an outside running game. Mark Fletcher had a nice catch in the flats for a first down last week against Stanford. So plays like those aren't technically running plays, but they do accomplish the same objective of stretching the field that an outside running play would. And I think Shannon Dawson is also saying that because of Miami's strong physical profile up front, it behooves them to run a power style, because that wears opponents down the longer the game goes, and maybe that has an effect, a physical cumulative effect on the opponent that you can't really explain, why, hey, this is, maybe he should have explained, because I'm explaining it now, so maybe he should have, but I think that takes an effect on the defense that doesn't necessarily come out in the stat sheet. He probably also wanted to point out that the running game, it works for Miami as long as the O-line is mauling people, which they didn't do a good enough job of against Louisville. And, the first half against Stanford probably didn't do a good enough job, but for the most part this season they have done a good job. So I'm giving you the devil's advocate and the clarification. I'm not saying I'm like standing up and cheering when we run between the guards and pick up 0 yards in those, in some of those situations. Like, I get the frustration, I get it, but I think his answer when it comes to explaining the formations and the style of play, it's really easy for us at home with the PlayStation controller to say, hey, let's run a toss sweep. And I think Dawson's kind of explaining why that stuff doesn't just automatically get called. But with that said, like I am all for more innovation, more unpredictability in the play calling and keeping the opponent off balance. And I wonder if we'll see more of that as the season goes on. We get this one from Steve in Port Orange, who says, what has to happen for Miami to make the ACC Championship game? I know we have to win out, but what are the scenarios for us to make it to Charlotte? All right, so I haven't seen any chart for this yet. So off the top of my head, you obviously need teams like Georgia Tech and Virginia, who currently have 0 conference losses. You need one of them or both of them to lose a conference game. Like, that has to happen, right? And of course, like you said, Miami probably needs to win out. Like, if you lose another game, it's going to be very, very, you need a bunch of other teams to cannibalize one another. So Miami wins out. You need Georgia Tech and or Virginia to lose a game. And then when you get into tiebreaker scenarios with one loss, you've got to hope, like if you're in a tie with either Virginia or Georgia Tech, the winning percentage of common opponents is a tiebreaker. Obviously, with 5 games left in the season, it's hard to say what that's going to look like, but you would need tie-breaking scenarios to break your way. You would need Louisville to lose again. They have 1 conference loss, because if Miami and Louisville both win out, then Louisville has the head-to-head tiebreaker against Miami. They would get a spot over us. So you would like Louisville to lose, and you got the head-to-head with SMU, so that's going to solve. That problem is going to solve itself. I think Duke has 2 conference losses now, so you don't worry about them as much. So you basically you need as much cannibalization as possible. You need somebody to beat Virginia. They have a road trip against Cal coming up, which could be tricky. You need somebody to beat Georgia Tech. You might need somebody else to beat Louisville, which obviously Miami couldn't do for themselves. So you need help the rest of the way. And it's actually statistically, Miami has a better shot of making it to the college football playoff if they don't play in the ACC championship game, because that would give you another opportunity to lose a game. That if Miami goes 11-1, which I'm not guaranteeing will happen, but if Miami goes 11-1 and doesn't make the ACC championship game, then you are almost certainly in the playoffs, where if you go to the ACC championship game and lose, maybe you don't get in. So, I would still, I'm a competitive guy. I want Miami to win the ACC, because I no longer want to have that weight on our shoulders of, we've been in this conference since 2004. We haven't won an ACC championship. It's been over 20 years. Like, I'm ready to get one. So hopefully Miami finds their way in. All right, we got some questions about SMU when we come back. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet. Miami's got a new commit today, by the way. Welcome, Keshawn Stancil. Keep it rolling here on Locked On Canes. Guys, Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move while you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. I love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. The swivel screen is a game changer. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, check out Locked On ACC. We had a big episode today because this might actually happen. James Franklin might become the next head coach at Virginia Tech. Now, listen, you can say what you want to about James Franklin didn't win this big game or that big game. That's ambition, right? James Franklin, to his credit, rebuilt the Penn State program, turned Penn State into a national championship contending team, and raised the standard at Penn State of championship or bust. That's why he got fired, because they weren't going to be in position to win a championship this year. So Virginia Tech is reportedly making big investments in their athletic budget, NIL budget, and they want to bring in a big-time guy like James Franklin. So if they're able to get that over the finish line, a big hire for the Hokies, and it would raise the profile of the ACC. It would add another proven, really good head coach and a program that becomes serious about winning again, because Virginia Tech has not been the same program I grew up on, right? I remember the days of Frank Beamer and Michael Vick. There's a different standard back then for Virginia Tech football. They're trying to get back to that. We talked about it on a new episode of Locked On ACC. All right, we get one from Bam80 who says, Donno, did you know SMU scheduled us as their homecoming game? You got to bring that up. I want to know, do our players and coaches know? When is the last time we were any team's homecoming game, and what's our record as the homecoming opponent? I tried to AI search that, and the results were all wrong. Like when I put in AI, what is Miami's record as the homecoming game for the opponent? They tried to tell me that we were 8-0, which is all because they had, like, I think when we played at North Carolina, and you remember the time, I hate to bring this up, you remember when Miami lost 62-26? I think that was North Carolina's homecoming game. So, like, we've been the homecoming game for plenty of teams. Listen, man, if SMU beats us, it's not going to be because they got an extra charge for Miami being their homecoming game. I think if SMU beats us, and they got a lot of injured players, by the way, including their quarterback, Kevin Jennings. He's going to play, but he's banged up, all right? If Miami loses this game, it's probably because self-inflicted wounds, too many penalties, too many turnovers, can't get the running game going. Like, those are the sort of things that would have to happen for Miami to lose. If SMU scheduling Miami as their homecoming game, it's not because they thought they could beat us. I think they schedule Miami as their homecoming game because that's going to be one of the biggest home games they have ever hosted. Like, period. One of the biggest home games, maybe the biggest SMU has, at least not since the Pony Excess era, right? And like since the 80s, biggest home game that they have hosted. So I think that's why it's their homecoming game. And you know what? I don't know if Miami's players and coaches are aware, because I don't think they care. Like, I don't think Mario Cristobal gets any extra motivation from knowing it's their homecoming. So I know, you know, maybe Mario knows, but I don't think Mario cares. But you know what? I want Miami to go in there and crash the party. Right? They got their homecoming traditions. Throw your traditions right in the garbage. Miami's coming in there to kick that butt on Saturday, I hope. We get one from Andrew in PA. Says, how many recruits do you think Miami's going to take this year? He says, if we were to flip the likes of Stancil, which we did, he asked this question before, we just flipped Stancil, Lamar Brown or Tank Jones, would they turn away anyone? Same goes at receiver. Okay, so we got 25 verbal commits right now. I could see 28 to 30. There might be, who knows, there might be some guys who leave the class. I think there's going to be more players who come into the class before signing day, 28 to 30, something like that. You remember that the scholarship has gone up. You can have up to 105 scholarships now, so you're not as restrained as you used to be with the new roster limit stuff. So, I don't think we're too worried about having a big class, especially because we're about to lose a bunch of guys to the NFL. So and graduation. So there's going to be a bunch of scholarships that open up. And, I honestly, I hate to talk about the concept of turning players away. I hate to talk about it because Miami puts so much into recruiting these players and making them feel like family. Like, I at the end of the day, it's up to the players to decide, if they feel like there's too much depth at the position that they play, they can decide what they want to decide. But as far as turning players away go, I think Miami can afford to take several more before National Signing Day without having to make any tough decisions like that. Jonathan from PA says, hey, just wondering what regular season game left you see being the toughest game for Miami. I'm going to take on Cristobal's 1-0 mentality. I'm going to say SMU on the road this weekend. I'm only concerned about this one. Now, if not this one, I'd say Pittsburgh on the road, but I'm only going to be concerned with going 1-0 this weekend in Dallas. And it could be a tough game. I know I mentioned Kevin Jennings is banged up. Their top offensive lineman, Logan Parr, is banged up. He might play. I think it's like a 50-50 thing right now. Chris Johnson Jr., former Miami running back who's there, may or may not play. He's banged up. They've got more injuries, SMU, than we do. But, I mean, in this situation, Miami is their Super Bowl, and they're going to give Miami their absolute best this weekend. Let's see. We get a question. Andy says, if you could go back in time, would you take Fernando Mendoza instead of Carson Beck? We still got, 5 games left to play in either team in the playoffs. I will say that when I brought up Fernando Mendoza's name when he hit the transfer portal, my listeners were like, no, keep this guy away. He played at Cal. He's not that good. It's funny how the opinions have changed on Fernando Mendoza. And also, the way the opinions have changed on Carson Beck just after a couple of games. I mean, after the Notre Dame wins, the USF game, the Florida State game where he played dynamite, people turn on this guy so quickly. I mean, how do you know Fernando Mendoza won't have a bad game coming up, or Carson Beck have some great games coming up? So let's have some faith, shall we? Let's see. Bucks Canes in Georgia says, what catastrophic flaw do we have this year that is absolutely going to cost us a spot in the college football playoff? He says, last year we had question marks about our defensive secondary, and by the time we wrapped up our Cal and Louisville games, those doubts were validated. Catastrophic flaw is, it's way, way too dramatic a way to put it. Concerns is the way that I would put it. Penalties, offensive lulls, turnovers. I think those are my concerns. If you're committing 10 penalties per game, you're not going to win a championship, right? I mean, Miami cut it down a little bit against Stanford. It was Stanford, but only 5 penalties for 30 yards last week. That was a lot better than the 9 penalties and the 11 penalties they had in the 2 games prior than that. So keep the penalties down. Take care of the football because, Miami's been really good when they've been even or win the turnover margin. They were almost impossible to beat. I mean, the game that we lost, we were -4 in turnovers, and we still lost the game by 3 points on a final possession, possible game-winning drive. So I think, overall, I think we feel really good about the defense. Really good now about the return game. I mean, Malachi Toney just caught fire with these punt returns, and hopefully Keelan Marion can break something in the kickoff return game. So I wouldn't say fatal flaws this year, but maybe a couple of concerns that could keep Miami out if they don't fix them. Huge thank you and shout out to everybody for making Locked On Canes your first listen day. Sorry we were on so late, but I had radio in the morning and the afternoon. And then when I figured we may have a commitment tonight, why not wait until 7 o'clock and we can welcome Keshawn Stancil to the U. So a big flip. Miami flips one from Clemson. Really good defensive lineman. Keshawn Stancil, welcome to the U. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. We'll have Grayson Singleton from Locked On SMU for a crossover right here on the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.